Stay fit here on the Morning Majlis, and one thing that we're celebrating is successes, and today we are celebrating the success of the Pakistan women's football team, and you might have seen and heard of this video on your social media platforms, and it is a free kick. That celebration itself, and we are very, very kindly joined by the individual responsible for that wonderful equaliser, Maria Khan. A very, very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's such a pleasure. Now, do you feel the chills after you watch that video highlights again, and about that goal in particular?
Every time. I think it's, just being able to score for your country is always a proud moment.
Yeah. And did you, it's not the easiest of all free kicks to take from that massive distance. Did you think that was going to go in, or was there a plan that you're going to pass it over for cross it over for a header, or was the shot on target the main goal?
So listen, I'm left-footed. And that free kick is actually something that I practice quite often. Right. So anytime we get that free kick in a game, I'm like, yes.
This is it.
This is me. I love, most of my goals have actually come from either a shot from that outside of the right, on the right corner, a set piece on that right corner. That's where most of my goals have come from, actually. Yeah.
So you really fancied your chance with that one?
I did. And then, so for me, again, my target, anytime I'm taking a set piece, keep it on frame. If you keep it on frame, you give it a chance. Whether it's back post, whether it's near post, whether it's down the you give it a chance. Okay. Put the ball down, set it up. I was like, all right, just keep it on target, do your job. Let whatever going to happen. Okay, well, I hope your future opposition goalkeepers weren't listening to this conversation. I was going to say, we keep this quiet. We're going to keep this part out.
Well, that's great. Well, now talk to us about this tournament. And, of course, you've received wonderful success and, representing Pakistan on that global stage in Saudi Arabia. A lot of fan base was there, a lot of fan support was there, so it must have been very amazing to experience. So how was the tournament?
Yeah, in all honesty, that last game felt like a home game.
Oh, yeah?
The Pakistani expat community was massive. I think Saudi Arabia did an amazing job hosting, especially on the back of their men's national team performance in the World Cup, their focus on women's football and developing women's football in the region. They were amazing hosts, right? So they welcomed four teams in total, including themselves, themselves, Comoros, and Mauritius. And it was basically a three-game tournament, best of three. Winner, of the three will take the tournament. We were able to walk away with some hardware. We took second. But again, an overall great experience. I think it goes to show development of women's sports in general in this part of the world. So really exciting things to come, I think, from all countries in this part of the world. And
now you're the skipper, you're the captain of the side and have been captaining for a while. So how do you keep the team's morale up, and how are they feeling after this big tournament?
Yeah, so I think anytime you get to walk away with some accolade for your country, it's always a good motivator. It's always, especially when you've been in camp for so long, because currently there's no domestic structure for women's football in Pakistan. So the national team is actually having to mimic a club team where we're together for longer periods of time. Right. Unlike other national teams where they'll report maybe 6 to 10 days before their competition.
Right.
We were together for 4 weeks, 5 weeks before that competition. Yeah, so I was in Pakistan since December 6th. I was in Pakistan. Only just got back Sunday.
Yeah.
So I think us being able to stay together, it really allows us to learn each other on and off the pitch. So again, overall, good experience for the girls, good international experience for them. We're back competing after a long time. So yeah, really positive.
I've got to touch on that as well, because there was a silent period where the board was going through some changes at the federation itself, and you weren't able to play international sports wearing the team jerseys. So what happened there, and how did the team firstly stay fit and regroup and come together again?
Yeah, absolutely. So last September was actually the first time either men's or women's had competed internationally in 8 years.
Oh, wow.
There was a FIFA ban placed on the Pakistan Football Federation due to third-party intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So FIFA have a rule where there can be no government intervention or third-party intervention, as things go sometimes in some of our beloved countries. There's certain people that feel that they should be governing the sport in the country, and FIFA was not happy with that. So they placed a ban on football activities, international football activities. The domestic structure still continued for men's, not so much for women's. So what ended up happening was the ban got lifted last July. And one of the first competitions that were in place were the South Asian Games for women. So the federation made the decision to say, okay, our first activity back after so long is going to be the women's competition for the South Asia Football Federation tournament. So last October, we participated in that for the first time in 8 years.
Wow.
So it was my first international experience, official international experience. It was my first cap. And I think if you saw that tournament versus the tournament that we just played now, you'll be able to see the growth of the team in such a small amount of time. Okay. So, it's a hats off to the coaching staff, the technical staff, the entire normalization committee, the federation supporting us. It's been tremendous experience and tremendous growth.
Wow. Okay, now I'm going to touch on this as well, because now the thing is, in South Asia, we always have this situation of people are never too satisfied.
Yeah.
Easily. They'll be like, okay, you went into South Asian tournament. Did you win it? You didn't win it, then we have no expectations from you. That kind of a vibe is always there. But now, and you said there's a big change that you've noticed. So where do you see the team growing now for the fans' expectations to become a reality?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for fans to understand that the normalization committee that's been put in place by FIFA is there to help revive football in the country. And I think what a lot of people fail to realize is when you're building football in a country that big, because again, let's keep in mind, Pakistan is the 5th largest country in the world, population of over 240 million. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
And I think, it's great that we're able to have these football activities and the both men and women competing internationally on a regular basis is just the start. But again, it's important for people to know that, when you're building a football foundation and trying to build the entire football community in a country, it's a marathon.
Yeah, now I can imagine. Now, we're talking about the tournament itself. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of critical minds thinking, okay, there was it Saudi Arabia,
Comoros and Mauritius.
And Mauritius, they'll be thinking, oh, you should have beaten these sides and won the tournament. But talk to us about the fact that it was a depleted squad. It wasn't a full-strength squad that you had because you're missing some strikers because of some injuries as well for one of the other UAE resident players as well. Talk to us about how that was a challenge.
Yeah, so I think, I think it was a very difficult challenge for our coaching staff, but I think once we understood what our challenges were, they did a really good job preparing, other players, and I think it also allowed other girls to step up and prove themselves. And I think everyone that, was there from the training camp, whether they played 90 minutes, whether they played 2 minutes, whether they played no minutes, every single player played their part. And every single player in this tour with us was pivotal to the success that we had. So I think, yes, we had the challenges that, we had to deal with, but again, it just goes to show you the amount of talent and depth of talent that is sitting right there in the country.
Okay. So, of course, all the squad members deserve a particular mention. But for some of the listeners out there, you're a skipper for the side. Who do you see as the rising stars and players to watch out for so far within your own team? Yeah,
so there, for me, there was quite a few girls actually that really stuck out. There's maybe only 4 or 5 of us that are actually 25 or older.
Okay.
Whereas majority of the squad you're looking at and that played were 16, 17,
No
18.
way.
Yes.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So to be able to identify just one, I'll be honest, like it's really hard because that potential, and keep in mind, we were able to compete at this level without having any domestic 11-a-side football. Comoros have a league, Mauritius have a league, Saudi have an amazing women's league right now, right? And they've been playing in it for the past 6, 7, 8 months. Pakistan has none of that, right? What you saw was a reflection of us being together for 6 weeks at the end of last year and 4 weeks now.
Wow.
So you look at 10 weeks of work and we were able to compete like that. I think, again, it just goes to show the amount of potential that's sitting right there.
Right. Okay, so how does one get selected then? If there's no league structure, how does this whole team come about and say, okay, this is the group? Yeah,
so there's one tournament a year.
Okay.
Called the National Women's Championship.
Okay.
And in that one tournament a year, you have the teams come together for a national tournament.
Okay.
And historically, that's been the trial for players to be selected for the national team. Now, what the Federation is trying to do and the strategy they're trying to put in place is they are focusing on introducing a women's league.
Right.
And a women's league structure, just, again, so the girls can be competing on a regular basis, because that one-off tournament a year, it's not enough.
Okay, and so once you've been, the other thing is that you guys, are professional football players, but that's not your full day job. You've all got other responsibilities and roles. How do you balance competitive level training with your day job?
Oh man, listen, ask my husband, ask Omar. No, so it's it's time management. I think from my side, because I have experienced football at a high level in the past. It's something that I've been a part of for quite some time. So I do understand the physical demands, the time demands, as well as the mental demands. It has become a lot easier for me to be able to manage my time, being transparent with my job, who are very supportive of what I'm doing off the field, while also being transparent with my coach, because there'll be times where I'll be on coach's hotspot, logged into a meeting while the team is warming up on the pitch. I'm there on my kit finishing one of my meetings. So it's just like, hey, this is my schedule. And again, it's to both sides, right? To my job, to the coach. This is my schedule. How can we make this work, right? Because right now, unfortunately, we're not in a position yet in this region to where you can just be a professional female athlete, at least in football.
Right. Okay.
So, but one thing that is very positive and I think important to note is that Pakistan Football Federation have introduced equal pay.
Yes.
So the men and the women, when we're there on duty, on international duty, we're getting paid the same. So that's a step in the right direction.
That's a very, very important step as well. And, it's a step adopted by, most sports as well at the moment. But speaking of other sports, you come from a background of squash players in your family.
Yes.
So competitive element is in your genes. We could argue that. Why did you pick up football, and what makes you love the sport and keep going?
Yeah, so my grandfather is Hashim Khan, and I grew up in the U.S. with him, and every single time he'd be like, Maria, why aren't you playing squash? What are you doing? And it was nice because we were still close enough to squash, but still able to have access to other sports. Okay. And in all honesty, the state that we lived in the U.S., squash was difficult to access.
True.
Right? So the accessibility back then to squash, it was a more northeast, elitist still at the time sport. Whereas, us being in a Midwest town, squash was, it was, again, difficult to access. Football was a lot easier to access, but we would go once a week with Grandpa to the club. He was like 75, 80 years old, still standing on the court, hitting the ball, making us run around.
Wow.
He still was able to make us run around, and he would always joke that my backhand was better than my forehand.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign of the potential in squash, but Football, it's something I picked up at age of 6, and it's just stayed with me since then.
Amazing. And how's it going for you? I mean, are you where do you want to see the team reach with the ambitions, and where would you like to see the Pakistan football team go headed? And you'll say, okay, we're in a good direction, and when I retire, this is where I want to leave the side, and when I'm letting go of the captaincy band as well.
Yeah, so I think for me it's because I've lived it, I've seen it, I see the potential, I see how hard these girls work. Like for these girls to not have had it easy when it comes to football, their resilience is something that motivates me to keep going. And I think for me it's focusing on the domestic structure, and for the ones that have the opportunity, can we get them access to teams abroad?
Okay.
Right? Can we start placing girls in Europe? Can we start placing girls here, UAE, Saudi, whatever it is? Can we really look to increase the level of exposure that these girls get to experience? So again, I hope to see more girls continuing to be passionate and participate. I hope we are able to find a nice balance between dual national players as well as local players, because I do think that having that dual national player experience and bringing best practice will only up the level of competition, healthy competition within the team. So again, it's about finding that balance. It's focusing on domestic football, but also ensuring that we do have access to regular competition, international competition and exposure, because again, as I mentioned, this team is so young.
Yeah.
Right. So from my side, I hope to, keep on playing until my legs can't anymore. But there are definitely there's a few girls that I think would be able to take my place in the future, and leave it. My goal is to leave it better than I found it.
Exactly.
And pay it forward. But I genuinely do believe that there's few girls in that team that have the potential to really bring that team to new heights.
No, that's very true. And now I'd like to also ask you to use this platform to communicate to your young, your teammates as well, who are listening to this conversation, and also to the fans, because and the society as well, because there's going to be a lot of. Sadly, there's always a stigma that's associated with women sports people in a country like Pakistan, where they say, look, I know you're playing it because you're young, but there's other responsibilities you should have in the future. What would your word of advice be for those individual players and for the fan base itself to say, let this team keep going, we can play and we can continue, and maybe eventually, inshallah, also get some accolades in the future?
Yeah, so for the players or aspiring athletes in general, my message has always been, find something you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be sport. There's so many other areas, and Pakistan is full of such young talent in so many different fields. So for me, it's find something you're passionate about, work hard at it, and something my mother always tells me is never take no for an answer.
There you go.
You're going to be told no all the time, but again, do you have that resilience to be able to deal with the no, deal with the rejection, deal with the hate, and come back stronger and use it as motivation? So that's to the players. I think to the fans, it's, listen, I know when we get in this winning culture, expectations rise.
True.
But people have to understand that there's going to be good times and there's going to be bad times. And for me, when we suffered this defeat against Mauritius in our second game in the tournament, for me, people think that teams are based on wins and losses, and the wins define a team. For me, what defines a team is how do we react after a defeat. Yeah. And I think showing how we reacted after a defeat and, having that support from the fan base, it was so crucial in Saudi. So I think as we continue to grow as a national team, as we continue to grow as a country in sports, we just need that ongoing unconditional support from fans, and we need everybody to believe. And inshallah, we can make Pakistan proud. We can make the Middle East proud. and Pakistan Zindabad.
Wow, what a nice summary over there. Maria Khan, thank you for joining us today. And, we wish you all the very best. And I'm going to play some video footage of people celebrating with you guys. Wonderful to see that support as well. And wish your team members all the very best. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.